Welcome back to Leadership Rediscovered with Laura Siebold. This episode is a continuation of last week's episode. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, we suggest you go back and listen to part 1.
I love the benefit of you having worked with leaders for so many decades that you can talk about, past experience, current experience, patterns, and things that you've observed across those different leaders that you've worked with. And so I'd like to in a minute explore some of those things that you've noticed. But before we jump into that, I have to ask you what your definition of leadership is and how you describe your leadership style.
I believe that, like I said earlier, we're all leaders, whether we have a title of leadership or not. And it's really about setting the example. It's about doing what we say we're going to do. There are tons of different leadership principles out there. I happen to really like the exemplary leadership examples that come through Leadership Challenge. So, with all this research, the authors of Leadership Challenge did over, I think we're moving into 50 years of research, but I know it's at least 40 years of research, really looking at what exemplary leaders do. What are the 5 practices of exemplary leaders? And it resonates with me. It resonates with the leaders that I work with. So I would say, are we modeling the way? Are we doing what we say we're going to do? Are we inspiring to a shared vision? So I think leaders inspire, and they're not hypocrites. They're they're doing what they say they're going to do. Yeah. They're not expecting a different standard for other people than for themselves. They're challenging the process in an innovative, just because we've always done things the way that we've always done things doesn't mean that there isn't a better way at some point to do things. And the key, the last 2 principles are really key to me, that we enable others to act, because I don't believe that leaders should do everything themselves. That's not what being a leader is. What being a leader is let's bring out your brilliance, and that's really where using coaching as a leadership style comes in. But let's really bring out your brilliance, and then we encourage the heart. We really pay attention to what lights this person up. How can I appreciate and step into a space of acknowledgement with this person? So that's what I mean. Yes, that's kind of leaning into a leadership principle, leaning into the Leadership Challenge. But I think their research and those principles I've been able to share with leaders forever. And that's what I really think good leaders do.
Yeah, I love that. And of course, I like the light language, because that's something I'm very passionate about. But I agree. I think sometimes, especially when leaders are going from an individual contributor role to any type of managerial role, that there's a struggle of trying to understand what their unique contribution is. And if I'm not the doer of everything now, and if my success isn't just solely dependent on me alone and the results that I get, what is my real purpose here, and what am I really supposed to be doing? And so I think what you've articulated is absolutely the unique aspects and the unique contribution that a leader can make that is different than a different type of role. And it's not title based. You can do that at any level in the organization.
Right. And I do believe that leaders who are given a leadership role, but are not given any kind of compass or any kind of help on how to do that, do kind of struggle with, but my claim to fame is that I do this really well. So how am I supposed to turn that piece over to somebody else? That's going to bring up a little insecurity, plus the trust factor. Like, do I trust that these other people are going to be able to do it the way that I did it? And then that whole concept of, if you do it a different way, is it going to have a good result? I don't know, because so I think that there is just so much, because leaders are under incredible pressure too, right? They have to meet deadlines, and they have to meet expectations. And I don't know how many times I've had a conversation with a leader saying, you want me to delegate, or, I know that I'm being told from the powers that be that I can't do all these things now and be in the position I'm in, but it's still my neck on the line kind of thing. So helping them navigate, how do I really encourage others to act and empower the people and let go of the learned helplessness that can happen. Because if I can't let anybody make a decision without my tweak and my adjustment to that, then what I'm really doing is teaching my team that they can't take a step without me. And that becomes learned helplessness.
Yeah, but it's so true because, and you brought it up earlier about a lot of times how people end up in people leadership roles. Oftentimes it is because they're the best at or a subject matter expert for some sort of process or procedure in an organization. And so to your point, suddenly that's taken away, the very thing that oftentimes gets them
their claim to fame. Yeah.
And then you're taking that away from them. And now they're like, so I'm not going to do that anymore. Now I have to lead other people that do that. And they might not be as good as me at how they do it, and I have to get results through them. I'm not able to contribute to those results. So no wonder
I get that it's a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and again, like I said, I was so thrilled to have this conversation with you because of the width and the depth of your perspective and work with leaders. I'd love to hear from you what types of things that you're seeing maybe now versus maybe it was 20 years ago. A lot of leaders would come in talking about these types of topics, and 20 years later, they're still talking about it, or here's some other things. And then I know you do a lot of work with teaching strategies and tools, and would love to hear about what types of work you're doing with leaders right now.
Okay, so maybe start with what are some of the changes that I've been seeing?
If you don't mind, that'd be great.
So one of the key things that I think over the 30 years that I've been working with leaders is that I think leaders are being asked now to do more with less.
Yeah.
So things weren't as lean and mean. Back in the day, when my husband was transferred here, and I came with him, so we were transferred here together. His company was it was on this huge complex, and they had their own golf course, and they had all these. And even in the years that he was with them, because they sold in I don't know, maybe late 90s, they sold to another company, but even before the complex just started, they were selling off buildings, and they closed their golf course, and they were, and leaders were being asked to do more with less, like I said, and just needing to be more strategic and more, and I think even sort of some ethical things started coming in, you can't take those gifts from customers so I think that over time things have honed in a little bit, but in addition to that, we had COVID. So then a lot of what I was been experiencing the last several years with the leaders that I work with is how to manage people remotely, how to get projects done in a different way. Now, I would say that there's pros and cons to that. I mean, I think companies are beginning to see that we can have a better, maybe even work-life balance with being able to not require that people come in all the time. Yet the other side of that is when we don't have that physical distinction between our workplace and our home place, there can be bleeding into, am I just working all the time and not spending? So we've got to pay attention to all those things, the boundary issues. Absolutely. How do I effectively lead people who I'm not seeing every day? I'm not having those conversations with them. How am I building in an opportunity for us to touch base? My son works for a large contract, or a large defense contractor, basically. And they're all remote workers, but his leader makes a concentrated effort to pull them together and buys them lunch once a month. They get together in a restaurant and connect with each other.
That's so huge.
Those kinds of things. How am I showing appreciation even distantly? How am I tapping into, is everybody doing okay? Is everybody getting their needs met? And how am I holding people accountable
Yeah.
distance wise? So I think an overall belief was there's no way we can be as productive remotely as if we are. And I think that that's maybe being challenged. I think some people probably are not as productive when they don't have to go in, and that others, might be that much more. My husband is signed in every day, 5:30, 6:00 in the morning. And I hear him on the phone and getting things done. And I'm like, I haven't even done my hair yet. What is going on? So I just think that, helping leaders understand the individuality of everybody on their team, and that as we're given these different challenges, how are we responding to them? And I do see companies continuing to shave things off and expect more from less. And I think that that's I think it's a real challenge, because my concern is that in some ways the human element gets lost in that.
Yes.
And I see people trying to do, and I see leaders just bursting at the seams to try to get everything done that's being handed to them. And they're actually now doing the job that 3 people used to do. And my concern about that is that as long as we continue to okay, I'll do more, where does the company realize that I'm expecting that this is not reasonable? Yeah. So I worry about people's mental health and well-being with that.
Yeah, I worry about that too, because I'm seeing a lot of that as well. And I do feel like people are being asked to bend and bend and bend, but at some point that it goes from bend to break. And how far can we push people? And are we really getting the best results?
Right.
If it's a business tool of we have to do this to stay competitive, are you really getting the best out of your people? Right. Are you really the most competitive doing that? And I understand, you and I are both business owners, so we understand the business, financial, strategic elements of those decisions. And we know in many cases a business is probably saying it's either this or we don't have a business at all. But at the same time, I have very similar concerns of the impact that it's having on the employees. And I think in many cases, people are just voting with their feet and saying, I've had enough and I'm out the door. And unfortunately, in many cases, I'm also hearing about people saying, well, I left this company for this situation, and then I ended up experiencing it in this next company.
Right. Because, is there a better alternative right now? I don't know.
Exactly. Wow. So as you're having these tough conversations, what types of strategies and tips and tools are you working with your leaders on? If you're willing to share, I'd love to hear some of that work you're doing.
One of the most exciting things that I get to do, and once again, that ripple effect that I think comes through, is that organizations are beginning to tune into, we need to give our leaders more sustainable tools to lead. And one of the ways that's sort of getting caught by fire is, how do we help our leaders move into a coaching culture? And this is the deal about that. The reality is that there are so many definitions of what coaching is.
Yes.
So
I'm like salivating as you start this conversation.
Exactly. Because it's like, what organization, says that you need to coach that person out of the organization. That's not coaching. That's managing that person out of the organization.
Thank you.
Or, how many times do we hear somebody say, yeah, I coached them. And when you find out they mentored that person. They shared their own personal experience to help that person. And every one of these conversations is needed. We have to have mentoring conversations. We have to have managing conversations. And yet coaching, when I'm really able to go in and help leaders, whether I'm working one-on-one with an executive and sort of seeding some of this in and helping them change the way they communicate, or just enhance what they're already doing. Or I've literally been able to work with some organizations and train hundreds of their leaders to begin to use more coaching. So what does that mean? That means rather than always being in a place of you being the expert, needing to fix it for the other person. What you're doing is acknowledging this person's in their role for a reason as well. So how can I help them join me in the solution? How can I invite their information, their thoughts, their what's important about this to them, their perspective, their experience, and then how can we use some reflection to kind of go deeper and is this what you're saying? Build understanding. How can we summarize to begin to create these really powerful solutions together? How can we challenge and support our employees and be in a place of genuine curiosity? So when I actually, I wish I had it with me. I didn't bring it. I have this coffee mug that was given to me by a leader that I worked with. And she was a young, upcoming, superstar. And yet they asked for her to get some coaching because of her communication style, of the way that she would go into a meeting where she was maybe third or fourth rung down and be in opposition to the person at the top rung saying, oh, that's not the way we need to do it. We need to do it this way. And so one of the things and it's part of this maturity too, right?
Yeah.
So being able to say, if you ask some questions first, if you explored what the other person is thinking, what they're bringing to the table, what their perspective is, how much more informed would your answer be? How much are you losing in this whole opportunity by having no curiosity? So we worked together for about 6 months, and she began to move up in the organization. And about 6 months after we had worked together, I got this box in the mail and opened it up. And there's this beautiful coffee mug that says "Stay Curious" on it.
Oh.
And she said, me staying curious is what has helped me thrive in the organization.
I love it.
And that's the whole concept. Because we can't be curious and make an assumption at the same time. It's just
you're right.
You just can't. So if I'm curious and I've let go of judgment, because that's the other thing that doesn't fit with curiosity. Now, does that mean we don't bring anything to the table? Of course we bring things to the table. Of course we have our experience. And how much more can I share the correct aspect of what's really needed if I better understand what's really needed? And the only way to do that is to ask some questions, to explore what's already been done, to find out what's the optimal outcome that we're looking for. So how can we find that balance between sharing and first inquiring? So, on that continuum between telling and asking, a lot of leaders are just in that place of telling, tell. And when I open up, what could we find with the asking? Let's build this asking muscle. Let's create. Just because you have a solution doesn't mean it's the only solution or even the best solution. And then, of course, we've got all that gray, right? Like between the telling and the asking, what's rich in there. So that's what I really lean into with the leaders that I work with. What can be built up? You're great at the telling. Let's build the asking. And then you can live in this area here and get the most from your people, empower them to bring their best forward. You don't have to do it all. We're doing the heavy lifting together, but you can't do the heavy lifting together if you don't empower your people.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're craving it. And I know sometimes leaders will say, well, if they have something to say, they should just say it. But you know how that there's a power differential hierarchy. I mean, sometimes people aren't comfortable just blah, like your coaching client. I'd say she's got confidence going for her. She's comfortable sharing, which is great. So there's not a lot of people always that feel comfortable and confident doing that and feel like I'm going to wait until the leader asks me. And then if they don't get asked, they're frustrated about why am I being paid the salary I'm being paid to just walk in the door and be told.
Told. And the other side of that is that if we're too quick to tell, whether we're telling as a coach or telling as a leader, it's going to shut down the other person's creativity. Like, so I begin thinking about what you're telling me rather than some of the things that I would have been thinking about. So, yeah, to your point, I'm here for a reason. Let me earn my income and let me be valued for my contribution.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your perspective on where listening falls in all of that as well, especially staying curious for longer and how that connects to listening instead of, just you said at the very beginning, instead of just listening to respond or, waiting for that opportunity to, okay, where can I jump in with my solution or what I want to do? But, how that ties into, because I know you do a lot of work in that space as well.
Right. So, it becomes that's silly, but it's true. So it's like you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and there's a reason for that.
Yes.
So we want to listen at least double, and we want to listen for what is it that, what do I need to ask or understand so that I can see through the same lens that this other person is seeing through? Because when I can see through their lens, and often, and this is going to be the book that I write. So often, we all come into, we are looking at things a particular way. We've got a tiny lens that we're looking through.
Tiny.
A leader that's really listening is listening to, how can I understand what they're, because that lens is what also is carrying the obstacles and the beliefs that are getting in the way and the challenges, all of that is. So if I can see through that same lens, I can maybe begin to understand. And then what do? Then I can begin to ask questions based upon what I'm hearing from listening, that challenge that a little bit, that begin to say, well, as you explore that situation, what else could be possible? What else? What's opening? As you hear yourself talk about the challenges that you're having, what other perspective might be helpful for you as you consider this? So ultimately, the goal with a coach asking questions or a leader asking questions is that the aperture begins to open up. The lens gets bigger. Well, what fits into a bigger lens? More possibility, more opportunity, more, ways to look at things. And so if I'm looking through this tiny lens and my leader says, don't do it that way, do it this way, I've still got all the what I believe to be true based upon my little lens. But if I'm asked a few questions and I'm like, there's other, then I'm bored with like, this is a good thing. I'm more motivated. My buy-in is there. I'm more willing to be, rather than I'm resentful and I didn't feel listened to and I don't feel understood. And I already tried that anyway. And if they'd only listened, they would know that I already tried that. So, it becomes collaboration versus coercion.
Yeah. Ooh, yes. That's a powerful concept. And we're both better for it.
Exactly.
Because as the leader, I'm also looking through my teeny tiny lens, right? It might be different than your teeny tiny lens, but I'm still looking through my little lens too. So as I start asking you questions, it's for both of us.
Then both of our lenses begin to open up. And then we might actually both be looking through this big lens.
Yeah,
the same
that's
lens.
Incredible. Oh, I love it. Well, I know as coaches we don't give advice, so I'm going to allow you to take your coach hat off for a minute. And if you thought about maybe some of those words of wisdom that you wish you could share with leaders, anything that for our audience here, as you think about leaders listening and just trying to do their best every day to show up in the best version of themselves, if you could give them advice, what advice would you give them?
Well, and I'm actually even going to say a little bit. I believe as coaches, we can give advice. I believe that it's about timing and balance. It's about harvesting as much as we can from our clients first and not being attached to that advice being taken. So what I would say is,
Meg's my new favorite coach.
I would say that, first of all, if we're not taking care of ourselves, then it's that whole concept of put on your own oxygen mask first. So pay attention to how are you taking care of your health and well-being, burning the candle at both ends. I mean, we can only give so much. None of us are superpowers or super beings. I mean, we're all human beings. So yes, I'm sure you have a ton to give and a ton of value, and take care of your health and well-being. So that would be the first advice. And then if you were to allow yourself to imagine that you don't have to have all the answers and you don't have to fix it yourself, but that you can, it doesn't say less of you if in fact you lean into one another. You know, who's the best resource for this? How can I do this? And become more of a collaborative team rather than I always have to do everything myself. I work with a lot of leaders who just feel like they have to do everything themselves. And I will tell you that when they begin to realize, I don't have to have all the answers, I don't have to do everything myself, we are better together. And I know I've said that before, but I'm a big believer in that. Then it's like, oh, and then what happens, to your point, other people are like, yes, I'm being valued. I'm being allowed to participate. I'm being allowed to bring my best forward. So I think that, that whole concept of Goldstein, I believe it's Gold, what got you here won't necessarily get you there.
Yeah. Marshall Goldsmith.
Yeah. I gave him a wrong last name. Sorry, Marshall. Anyway, with that, I think that leaders are in a place of needing to embrace that. The other tool that you might feel is a little woo-woo, but I love, and I think it's a great leadership principles, are the 4 agreements. Are you familiar with the 4 agreements?
Yes.
I love sharing the 4 agreements with people. So just in general, those 4 agreements: be impeccable with your word. Do what you say you're going to do. Don't take, and this is the big one, don't take anything personally. The reality is you are not the center of anybody else's universe. So if they're having a bad day, if they are, grumpy, it doesn't, and you said this earlier, Laura, it might be everything to do with the leader. Rarely is it about us. And if we can lean into that place of don't take anything personally, it will serve you so well as a leader. And then so close to that is don't make assumptions. And what do we do instead of making assumptions? We ask questions. We lean into curiosity. Bingo. And then finally, always do your best. If we're all committed to doing our best, to bringing our best forward, understanding none of us are perfect. We're going to screw up. We're going to have, struggles. It's okay. We're human beings, but as long as we're committed to always doing our best, those are principles. I love those 4 principles. I have been called out on them myself. Like when somebody oh my gosh, I was wondering why you didn't get back to me. Meg, don't take things personally. I know you probably have a busy life and it's not all about me. Believe it or not, it's not all about me. So
I know, but it's so true. I literally had that conversation in a coaching conversation this morning about taking things personally and not taking things personally. I wish I could get back all the time that I wasted early in my career, where I was too much trying to read the emotion and the mood of my bosses. And if they were withdrawn or short with me or whatever the case was, instead of assuming that I had done something wrong or I was about to be fired, I mean, my creative brain concocted all kinds of stories. And none of them were true.
Our catastrophic thoughts are never ending. Yes.
Yeah. I'd be like sitting at my desk. She's on her phone right now. Is she on the phone with someone about me and they're putting my termination paper together? No. I mean, it was just.
And we're not that important. I'm sorry. I mean, we're not the center of the universe for everyone.
No, exactly. So I wish I could have all those years back that I wasted worrying about that.
And yet we've grown so much because of those, right?
Yes, exactly. But it's so true. Oh my goodness. Meg, you are such a joy. Looked at the clock and was like, oh my goodness, we have just been going right through this so quickly. And I could keep going, but I'm trying to be respectful of your time. I'd love to hear coaching question. What have we left on the table? Anything that we haven't discussed today that you were hoping that we would?
No, I mean, you've done a beautiful job. You're a lovely hostess. I mean,
Thank you.
it's so comfortable to be here and talk about, and I can
Aw.
tell your passion for leaders
Yes.
as well, and
Yes.
for helping, all of us just communicate more effectively. I would say the only other thing based upon what you were talking about, one of my favorite things to teach in cognitive coaching is that we need to let go of mind reading. None of us are given the possibility of reading other people's minds.
Yes.
We don't have a crystal ball that's so instead, what should we do? If you find yourself in a place of jumping to a conclusion based upon mind reading, I would recommend that you ask yourself, do I know that to be true, or am I making an assumption about that? And what if I'm making an assumption, what could I ask, or how could I explore that so that I'm really operating off of fact rather than assumption? Your life will be easier. Your team's life will be easier. You'll be a more confident leader, and you can let go of all the incredible story. We are wonderful storytellers.
Yes, we
so
are.
just ask yourself, what else could be
Yes.
true? That
What
story's not
else
working for
could
me.
be
So what else
true?
could be true?
Yes. And also a conversation I just had this morning with a coaching client, because you're right. All the time I will hear people say, my boss hates me. And it's like, is that true?
True.
I think you'll have to correct me on this one. Is it Byron Katie that does the, is that true? And then how do you know it to be true? Or how can we know it to be true? Same thing. But I like how you said, what else could be true? So maybe your boss really doesn't like you. Or
what else could be true?
Could be true.
And it's good to do that at least 3 times, because what that does is it begins to show the person, oh, if I made up that story, I could make up another story, and I could make up another story.
Well, yeah, because then we get into the confirmation bias of looking for signs that our story is true. So then it becomes, well, yeah, because she didn't include me in that team meeting today, or she was short with me earlier. And we start spinning. To your point, our minds still, they do a great job.
Our minds stories. Are very fertile, particularly with catastrophic things. They can be very fertile.
Oh yes. I have a black belt in catastrophizing situations. I think that goes with being a mom, though. I have to give myself a little grace. I think part of that's just being a mom.
And I will tell you that my catastrophic muscle is most enhanced around my children, because it just because I just think that that's our protective instinct. And then if they're, they're not just late, they're in a ditch somewhere kind of thing. So,
what else could be true?
Exactly.
I love this. Thank you. Would you be willing to do a 60-second lightning round with me? That's my game that I end. Okay, so this is 60 seconds to answer as many open-ended questions about you. So hopefully you know the answers pretty well. They're just about you. But as many as you can in 60 seconds.
Okay.
Let me start my timer here. Okay, what season best fits your personality?
Spring.
Oh, what's your most used emoji in text?
A heart.
Aw. What book, song, movie, or podcast has had the greatest impact on your life?
Ooh, I'm going to say Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay. And I feel like your podcast probably has had if not your own life, other people's lives. What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
That I'm one of 9 children.
Whoa. Okay. What you have to tell us your birth order if you don't mind.
I'm number 8.
Number 8. Okay. And fill in the blank. I spend too much money on
shoes.
Oh, my new best friend. What celebrity would you want to play you in a movie?
Oh, I've been so bad about watching movies. I don't know.
We can pass. Do you want to pass?
Okay, pass on that one.
I'll ask you my last question. What is the sorry, my timer won't stop here. What is the most meaningful piece of clothing or jewelry you own?
Oh, um, you know what's interesting is I just lost my mom, and I
Sorry.
got a lot of pieces from her. So I think like being able to put on a piece that I know is from my mom, and she was such a glam girl, and she just loved getting all foofed up. So anytime I put on something and I know that is something she enjoyed wearing, I think that's and obviously my wedding band and all those. But I really think that being able to open up my jewelry box and see pieces from my mom is pretty special.
That's really special. I have actually the rings I have on right now are both of my grandmother's rings. And so when I put them on, I always think about it. It's like I've got both my grandmothers with me. So
that's
it's just
so neat.
That does mean a lot. Well, there goes my alarm again.
Your alarm is very insistent.
Yes, the lightning round is over. But Meg, you are such a joy. And I just want to encourage everyone to listen to your podcast. The Star Coach Show has been around. Tell me again how many seasons or how many episodes you've done, whichever is easier.
So the episode that went live yesterday was episode 352.
Oh my gosh, 352. Wow, that is incredible. That is a testament to many, many years of perseverance. And so I do want to encourage everyone to listen to it. It's fantastic. I have gotten so much value out of it. And I promise people who are listening, you're such a light that when you listen, it's hard not to be in a better mood when you're done, regardless of the content of the podcast. It's just hard not to be in a better mood. So I just want to thank you for all the energy that you bring, the heart that you bring, and being so generous and gracious, because it really shines through in your work that you do.
Well, that is the loveliest compliment. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on your show to talk about this important thing and to just have fun. I mean, it was just really fun.
Yeah, really fun. Thank you. I appreciate you doing this because I know, again, you're oftentimes in the hostess chair, but
it's fun to be on this side. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. And I'll go ahead and wrap the show now, and we can hang on for another second or two. But that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for another episode here of Leadership Rediscovered. Until next time, shine bright, everyone.